You've heard stories like this before. Someone claims to see a ghost or feels a presence in a room. Part of you wants to write it off, but part of you wonders if there's something real behind it. What if those moments aren't just delusions? What if they're glimpses of something just outside our sensory range? Then that would change everything. This video offers a grounded, scientific way to understand those experiences without drifting into superstition. So you walk away with a framework that makes the unexplainable finally make sense. We started this video with a familiar story. Someone sees, hears, or feels something right after a loved one dies. It's the kind of moment people usually keep to themselves, afraid it'll sound irrational. But there's something strange about these moments. They're quiet, but undeniable. You're not looking for them. You're brushing your teeth, folding laundry, walking through the house, and suddenly there's a shift. The air feels thicker. A thought rises that you didn't call for. And for a few seconds, it feels like someone's there. Some people shrug it off and move on. Others hold on to it for the rest of their lives, convinced it meant something, even if they can't explain what. The hard part is this. The experience feels subjectively real, yet it defies objective measurement. And not everyone has it, which raises a deeper question. Why do some minds seem to generate this sensation while others never do? What if certain people, under certain conditions, are tuning into a layer of consciousness that's always there, just not always accessible? Think about a dog whistle. You can't hear it, but your dog can. The signal is real, but it's just outside your sensory range. Now flip that inward. What if these so-called visits are less about spirits entering our space and more about us momentarily accessing a field of awareness we're usually filtered off from? Our senses shape what we believe is real, but they're only showing us a tiny piece of the whole. We trust our senses by default. Sight, sound, touch. They're our first filters for deciding what's real. If you can't see it, hear it, or measure it, most people file it away as imagination or error. But the scientific truth is, your senses are shockingly limited. Start with vision. You see less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. That means the overwhelming majority of light and radiation, from gamma waves to radio signals, is invisible to you. It's not that it doesn't exist, you just can't perceive it. Dogs hear frequencies we can't. Bees see ultraviolet patterns on flowers. Some snakes detect infrared heat trails. These aren't superpowers. They're just different biological filters. Your reality is not the reality. It's a tiny slice, tuned for survival. Now stretch that idea. If we only perceive a narrow slice of the electromagnetic spectrum, it's possible that other layers of consciousness operate on frequencies we simply don't register. Not because they're mystical, but because our biology filters them out. Our senses evolved for survival, not for total awareness. They show us what helps us stay alive, not everything that exists. And that's where the brain comes in. In neuroscience, there's a concept called predictive coding. It's the idea that your brain doesn't just record reality, it constantly predicts it. It fills in the blanks based on past experience, creating a seamless picture from incomplete data. Most of what you see isn't raw input. It's your brain's best reconstruction of what it thinks is there. So if your perception already depends on educated guessing, imagine what happens when the brain encounters input it doesn't recognize, something just outside its usual bandwidth. It might dismiss it, reshape it, or fail to register it at all. The dominant view in science says your thoughts are just bundles of neurons firing. The brain is a machine and consciousness its output. But it struggles with the big question: why does red feel like something? Why do you experience an inner you at all? There's a different model gaining attention. What if the brain doesn't create consciousness, but it tunes into it? Think of your brain like a radio. The broadcast exists whether the radio is on or not. The radio doesn't produce the music, it receives it. If consciousness works that way, then it isn't confined to your skull. It's a field, wide, connected, and accessible under the right conditions. In physics, a field is not just a metaphor. It's a real thing, an invisible structure that carries energy and information and influences what happens in matter. Some scientists propose our brain's own electromagnetic field, or similar information field, might be the actual seat of awareness, rather than the neurons alone. That change in perspective makes a big difference. It opens up the possibility that when someone feels a presence, they might be hearing a part of the broadcast. This reframes everything. If the mind is tuning into consciousness rather than producing it, then altered states, dreams, near-death experiences, even those eerie feelings of presence might just be shifts in the signal, not malfunctions of the brain. The deeper you look into physics, the stranger reality becomes. You think of your mind as something separate. It's your own private space where memories, fears, and quiet thoughts live untouched by the world. But the science that describes matter and energy doesn't draw such hard lines. At the quantum scale, the world behaves in ways that make inside and outside almost meaningless. Take entanglement, a phenomenon where two particles become linked in such a way that they act as one system even when separated by enormous distance. If you change the spin or state of one, the other reacts instantly, whether it's across the lab or across a galaxy. It doesn't rely on a signal traveling through space. It's as if information exists in both places at once. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Today, we just call it data, confirmed in countless experiments. If something as small as a particle can stay connected beyond space and time, what about something as complex as awareness? Could consciousness operate the same way, not confined to the brain, but part of a wider field we haven't yet learned to measure? Physics already gives us a framework for this kind of connection, and it gives us another principle that challenges the idea of finality, called the conservation of energy. One of the most reliable laws in science is the conservation of energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. When a log burns, its shape disappears, but its essence continues as heat, light, and ash. Nothing vanishes. It just changes form. If consciousness is somehow linked to energy or information, it might follow the same principle. Death wouldn't erase awareness, it would just redistribute it. Not as a ghost floating in space, but as a pattern diffusing into a larger field, still part of the system and still participating. That might sound philosophical, but data from several scientific frontiers keeps pointing in this direction. And not from the edges of the internet, from hospitals and universities quietly studying what happens when consciousness slips the boundaries of the brain. Take the research of Dr. Sam Parnia at NYU Langone and Dr. Pim van Lommel in the Netherlands. Both have studied hundreds of cardiac arrest survivors whose brains showed little to no measurable activity. Yet some later described clear, structured memories from that flatline window. They recalled conversations, instruments, and scenes that matched medical reports, along with vivid experiences of light, review, and connection that felt more real than reality itself. These cases challenge the idea that consciousness simply shuts off when the brain does. It doesn't stop there. At the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies, researchers like Dr. Ian Stevenson and Dr. Jim Tucker have spent decades investigating children who recall past lives. One case often cited is James Leininger, a young boy from Louisiana who began describing detailed memories of being a World War II fighter pilot named James Houston Jr., including the model of the plane, the aircraft carrier's name, and the pilot's death over Iwo Jima. Historical records later confirmed those exact details, even though his family had no prior knowledge of them. None of this is proof in the mathematical sense. But it paints a pattern that suggests that awareness may not always switch off when the brain does. If energy and information can persist, perhaps consciousness can too. And maybe what some describe as a presence is the natural echo of that continuity. Not a haunting, but a field still resonating with memory. Quantum physics, thermodynamics, and consciousness research all hint at the same idea. Information doesn't disappear. It moves. Through matter, through energy, and possibly through us. So maybe what we call a ghost or angel isn't breaking the laws of nature at all. Maybe it's nature itself, revealing how much of its design still lives just beyond our current perception. Cultures across time also describe similar spiritual experiences. Why are their stories so consistent? It's easy to dismiss ancient stories as outdated folklore. Ghosts, angels, ancestors watching over us. To the modern mind, these sound like relics of less informed times. Across vastly different geographies and eras, with no contact between them, civilizations describe almost identical patterns. Egyptian Ka spirits, Norse Fylgjur, Christian angels, Buddhist bodhisattvas, indigenous spirit guides, different names, different rituals, but the same idea. A presence that isn't physical, but feels real. A being that brings insight, protection, or warning, and then vanishes. How did cultures separated by oceans and centuries land on such similar imagery? Maybe it wasn't imagination. Maybe they were all describing something real, but filtered through language, belief, and cultural metaphor. Think of it like radio tuning. Each culture picked up the same broadcast, but described it in their own dialect. The symbols differed, but the signal was consistent. This view doesn't dismiss religion or spiritual tradition. It honors them, but reframes them as early attempts to map a field of consciousness that modern science is only beginning to touch. And it helps explain why spiritual experiences still happen today, even if the vocabulary has changed. Someone today might say energy or frequency, where someone centuries ago said spirit or angel. The phenomena haven't changed, just the labels. The pattern that shows up again and again is people reporting unusual experiences, not when they're calm and rational, but when something's altered. They're grieving, or dreaming, or deep in meditation. Sometimes they've taken psychedelics, other times it's after a trauma. But in all cases, their normal mental filter is down. And that's the key. Your brain isn't designed to show you everything. It's designed to filter out most of what's unnecessary so you can survive. In technical terms, it's a signal processor with a very strong noise gate. But when that gate opens, even slightly, then more signal gets through. Psychedelics like psilocybin and DMT are known to reduce activity in the brain's default mode network, which normally acts like a bouncer at the door of awareness. With that gate relaxed, people report vivid, often symbolic experiences they describe as more real than real. Meditation does something similar, especially deep, long-term practice. Grief and trauma also shift your neurochemistry. They disrupt your usual patterns and lower your guard, not by choice, but by intensity. And in that rawness, people sometimes report sensing things they can't explain. Even dreams play a role. The logical brain steps aside, and suddenly you're in contact with imagery, memory, and insight that feels guided. These aren't hallucinations in the cartoon sense. They're states of consciousness where the filtering mechanism softens and what's usually blocked out starts to come through. When people talk about seeing angels, ghosts, or loved ones after they've passed, the images are often vivid. Wings, glowing light, and familiar faces. But what if those forms aren't literal? What if they're the mind's way of translating something real that doesn't have a shape of its own? Imagine this. A woman wakes up in the middle of the night and feels her late husband sitting on the edge of the bed. She doesn't see him, but the weight, the warmth, the quiet knowing, it's all there. She tells no one, afraid it means she's losing touch with reality. But what if her brain wasn't inventing him? What if it was detecting him? In science, we know the brain is a powerful translator. When it receives unfamiliar information, it turns it into images and sensations it can understand. If consciousness is a shared field, then maybe what she felt wasn't imagination, but a momentary overlap between her awareness and the informational trace of someone she loved. The signal came through and her brain rendered it as presence. In physics, there's a concept called coherence. When waves align in perfect rhythm, they amplify each other. The same thing might happen in the field of consciousness. When emotion, memory, and intention line up, they create a pattern strong enough to register in awareness. Of course, there are neurological explanations for these experiences. Temporal lobe activity can create sensations of presence. Hypnagogic states, that twilight phase between waking and sleep, can produce strikingly real images. And conditions like Charles Bonnet's syndrome can fill sensory gaps with vivid projections when the brain is deprived of input. In other words, the brain can generate convincing experiences entirely on its own. A 2014 experiment at the École Polytechnique Fédérale in Switzerland proved just how easily that can happen. Researchers disrupted volunteers' sensorimotor feedback using robotic touch. Almost half immediately felt a presence behind them, though the room was empty. Their brains, confused by conflicting signals, tried to make sense of it, and in doing so, created the feeling that someone else was there. It's a clear example of how perception and interpretation are deeply intertwined. But here's the mistake we often make. Assuming that because the brain can fabricate an experience, that doesn't mean it always does. A radio filled with static doesn't prove there's no broadcast. It proves the receiver isn't perfect. The interference and the signal can exist at the same time. So when someone senses a loved one near or sees a figure during meditation, maybe both explanations are true. The brain might be translating a subtle stimulus into something it understands, while the field itself provides the raw input the mind is trying to decode. If these moments are real in any way, then the obvious question is, why doesn't everyone experience them? Why do some people swear they've seen or felt something extraordinary, while others never do? A few years ago, researchers at the University of Northampton studied people who reported frequent intuitive or paranormal experiences. What they found wasn't superstition, it was sensitivity. These people scored high on a psychological measure called thin boundary perception. It means their mental filters are just a little more porous. They daydream easily, absorb emotion quickly, and notice subtle shifts in their environment that most people tune out. They aren't unstable, they're receptive. Think of perception like a dial on a radio. Some people's receivers are tuned a little wider. They catch faint signals most of us miss. Others filter more aggressively, staying focused on what's physical and practical. Neither is better. They're simply tuned for different experiences of the same world. Science actually supports this idea. Neuroscience shows that the brain is constantly predicting what's out there, filling in gaps and filtering out what it deems irrelevant. That keeps us functional, but it also means we perceive far less than what actually surrounds us. When those filters loosen through emotion, meditation, trauma, or even grief, more signal can slip through. Not magic, not delusion, just a temporary widening of the bandwidth. So rather than dividing people into believers and skeptics, it might be more accurate to say our filters differ. Experience, temperament, and openness all adjust the dial. Routine can narrow it. Wonder can expand it. If consciousness really is a shared field, then we're all connected to it, just not all listening at the same volume. And maybe that's the point. Sensitivity isn't about having special powers. It's simply awareness tuned, however briefly, to a broader range of what's real. Maybe belief doesn't mean abandoning reason. Maybe it means expanding it. Because the more science uncovers, the more it starts to circle the same questions spirituality has asked all along. What is awareness? Where does it go? And what exactly are we part of? You don't have to believe in ghosts or halos to see that something persists. Physics calls it conservation. Spirituality calls it presence. So perhaps these moments, the sense of someone near, the feeling of being guided, aren't about the dead reaching out to us, but about the living brushing up against the wider field we all belong to. They're reminders that reality is still unfolding far beyond our senses, and that consciousness, whatever it is, keeps finding ways to speak. In the end, angels and ghosts might not be visitors from elsewhere. They might be echoes from the same field that holds us all, and proof that even in silence, something is still listening.